Welcome to Unit 2 or Week 2 of the CS1101 Introduction to Programming course featuring Python. I have the discussion question up in the sticky note on screen so we can follow the task that we've been given. Let me jump right into it. Now, some of the main bits of information you'll find in Chapter 3, especially this section here 3.7, because you'll need to identify the parts of a function in your example. It may mean that you need to go over some of the previous topics in Chapter 2, which talks about variables and assignment statements, variable names, so you know what variable names are correct to use, but I'll try to cover some of these topics as I go into functions, okay? Alright, so as I said before, the main thing that you want to do is learn how to create your own function. And if you want to start at that exact spot, you go to section 3.4. Remember, I do encourage you reading from chapter 1 to 3 to get the complete knowledge, but let's go right ahead. So we're using Python Anywhere, which is free and easy to use, whether you have a Mac PC or a mobile device. We're required to create a script. So in the previous assignments, we created a console program, which it was not saved. We can't retrieve it. It disappears after we close the program. We're going to create a file called a script. The scripts end in .py. You can see here I've created 2 scripts before, but we're going to create a new one. To do that, on the Python Anywhere website, you're going to go here and open another file. Now you have a folder structure here that you need to follow when you're creating your file. So it's going to be /home/ your username and then the name of the file. Let me show you how it goes. So I click open file. So I'm going to type /home. And my username is Lee UOP student, and then I'm going to have a slash and the name of the file, right? I'm just going to call mine unit 2.py. You can call it whatever you want, okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and click new file. And here we have a blank area that we can type our script file in. I'm just going to start it with a comment. Comment started with the hashtag. This is my unit 2 discussion program. I'm just typing this to identify it. You can say anything you want to say there. You don't have to have a comment, by the way. But let's just go right into it. So you need to define a function. Now if we use the template that's given us in the textbook, it'll give us a good way to get started, okay? So I recommend that you start with an example that already should be known to be working, and then you can make changes to it after that. That's usually some of the best ways you can learn. Now let me just show you something interesting about functions and code in Python. Because the Python interpreter uses a special feature, you can't have too many of these consoles on Python Anywhere. So in my case here, I have too many, so I'll need to go back and delete one of these, right? Because it needs to have a console to be able to run it. So alright, because Python Anywhere only gives you 2 consoles to use. So what I'm going to do is to kill some of the consoles. So I'll just click on that link there, and then I'll just remove these. Okay. So even though we created a script, in order for us to run it, we need a console space. I'll get rid of this one too. We just need to be able to save the file after it works, alright? So let's go back to Python Anywhere. Let me go back to my dashboard. And now let me go back to the file I created. So you see I have no consoles there. So if you encounter that error, that's the problem, okay? Alright, just a little bit of a teething pain with free software. Now let's try to run the file. Okay, the console pops up. It's loading the environment. And let's see what happens here. Alright, you see it says an indented block error, and that's because we need to have an indent to show the body of the function. So these 2 lines here, print I'm a lumberjack, I'm okay, print I sleep all night, I work all day, are part of the function body called print lyrics. You only know that because there's an indentation, see, about a ½ inch there, right here, and that's what's actually going to define the function. So Python is very specific when it comes to spacing. So in order for me to have this to work, I need to tab that over, and I tab this over. So if I just had one of them tabbed over, then it would not treat this second line as a part of the function. So if I run it, for example, let me go ahead and run this again. It's going to print the second line when it shouldn't have printed it, because the only way a function is supposed to execute is when you call it, and I did not call the function yet. I'm going to show you what I mean by calling a function in just a second here. But let me indent this to be a part of the full function block. Define is how you start a function, def, print lyrics. Remember, I'm kind of giving you a quick overview because we should have really gone through in sequence, right? But this is to get you up and running fast. Anyhow, let's run this file once more. And you see it's blank. Why is it blank? Is that the program didn't work? The program is fine. We didn't call the function. To call a function, you use the function's name. So we would say print underscore lyrics, because blank spaces aren't allowed in names, so that's why we use underscore. Remember that tip. And you have the curve bracket. When you call the function, you print its name, you type its name, I should say, with the curved parentheses brackets. Alright, so let's run this now, and it should give us the results of what define lyrics does. So notice when we call the print lyrics, it executed this code. Just to prove this to you, I'm going to do this 2 more times, and I'm going to show you that it's going to print those statements a total of 3 times, just to show that this is actually calling the function. Lyrics print underscore lyrics. Alright, so if I run this, we should see I'm a lumberjack 3 times, I sleep all night and work all day 3 times, because we have 3 function calls here. So let me run this. And notice, as we suspected, we have a total of 6 statements, or 3 pairs of I'm a lumberjack, I'm okay, I sleep all night and I work all day. Alright, so that's how you call a function. But the first example we're to do is we're to define a function that takes an argument and call the function. Alright, let me just show you what that is exactly, okay? So let's use this template to create our function, right? So to create a function, we start with def, and we give our function a name. So I'm going to say put your name here. Now please don't type this in your actual work to your instructor in the university. You're just going to change this to make it whatever you want it to be, okay? But I'm just going to show you that this will work fine, okay? And in the bracket here, we're going to put a variable, which is a special kind of variable, okay? Let me say student name, okay? I remember it's case sensitive, so you have to use capitals wherever capitals appear and lowercase where lowercase appears. Then let's go to the body of our function. And I'm going to say print, open quotation, welcome, and then student name. Alright, so we're just going to have just one line in the function. Now let me show you what the parts of this function really means, okay? So student name here is going to be what you call a parameter. So if you go to the textbook, there's going to be a lot of reading to do, alright? So I know it's going to be a bit challenging, but let's see if we can do this together. You can find that explanation in 3.7 in your textbook, okay? So as you can see here, it says that the arguments are assigned to variables called parameters. So when you have a variable inside of a function, it's called a parameter. Alright, so I'm gonna show you how you explain all of this when you run the code. Let's just run the code first. So we're gonna say put, because we have to actually type the exact name of the function, put your name here. Remember, don't use this, just make up your own name. You can call it something else, okay? And we have to actually use a student's name, because remember, we're going to actually be using the program now. We expect it to do results. It's expecting an argument. This is what it means by define a function that takes an argument. So the argument we're going to put in here is somebody's name. So let me say Lee. Okay, so we're expecting it to say welcome Lee. Let's see if it does that. Moment of truth now, drum roll, da 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 dum. Let's run this. Oh, we have invalid syntax. Okay, let's see what's the mistake or error that we have here. It says it's on line 8, so we want to make sure that we fix that. Alright, let's do that right now. Okay, now if you notice that following the format of define the function, I did not place the colon where it should have been, okay? Nor the curly brackets, right? I got too excited, got way ahead of myself, okay? So I'm supposed to have the colon here because in this case my brackets aren't empty because they do have a parameter inside them, okay? Let's go ahead and run this again. And now our program works and it says welcome Lee. Okay, so this is exactly what we want to have happen. We want to have it take an argument into the program, and we want it to produce the result in the exact way we expect, printing the name. So if I change this and I put some other person's name there, I can call this more than one time, as you remember from the previous example. Let's say Nelson. Alright, and let's run this program. It says welcome Lee, welcome Nelson, because what is happening here is that it is taking Nelson, putting it all the way, it's going back to this function definition up here, it's going to jump in this slot here, so to speak, then it's going to become this value inside of this variable here. Alright, let me do one more example to show. Let's create a totally different function and it's going to do something totally different, okay? So let me get rid of these function calls. Notice that the first function that we had from the textbook, it doesn't print anything because we didn't call it. And I can get rid of it now because we have our first example that works. Let me create a totally new function that does something else. So let me say define, let me call this multiply 2 by 2. Okay, remember the names are case sensitive, so if you use capitals you have to use them exactly as you see them here, right? Okay, and this one won't take any arguments. Well, better not to do that because the question says we must define a function that takes an argument. So let me just call it multiply number. So let me change the name. Let me call it multiply number by 2. Okay, and I will call the parameter here number. Oh, I'm forgetting the colon once again. Remember, we need the colon at the end there, and we indent one time, and let's say return number and the multiplication sign and 2. Now when you want to send the value of any calculation, something like that, back to the main program, you use the return word. Okay, so let's go ahead and now remember, you're seeing you'll see all of this when you read through the chapter in functions. I'm just giving you a shortcut here. So let's see if we can use this function here. Now, how do we use our function? Remember, we call it. So what's the first thing that we would type? Can you tell me? You can pause the video, take a few seconds and see if you can figure it out before I give you the answer. Okay, so first we need to have the function name exactly as it is spelled at the top there with all the capitals where there should be, number by 2. And what do you think we're going to have in the brackets? Is it going to be empty or is it going to have an argument? Yes, it will have an argument. So we need to put a number there. Let me say 50. Okay, and let's run the program. Okay, but something interesting happened. We don't see it printing anything, and that's because we didn't have a print statement. So yikes, how do we solve this now? Well, it turns out that we probably should have just had it print something. Okay, so let's instead do the calculation in a print statement. Okay, so I still need to indent this, but It's already indented. So let's say print number times 2. So sometimes you have to think out the program as you go along, and you may make changes, okay? So let me not edit this video and let me be real honest. So return wasn't the best thing to use right there, okay? But here we go, print number times 2. Okay, so this will give us something on the screen. So we have to reinvent ourselves, okay? So let's go ahead and run. And then we get 100, okay? If we try another number, let's say multiply number by 2. Let's say we try 6. I will leave both results, both function calls on the screen. Let's run this. All right, so we have 112 because the first one gives us 100 when you multiply it by 2. The second one gives us 12. 6 times 2 is 12. Okay, now to answer this question, so this will be the first part, right? You would create your function. So this is an example of one function. Example A. This is example B. All right, so you could use either A or B as your answer for the first question. Remember, don't exactly copy this code. You'll be severely punished for plagiarism. You're going to change the name, so you could change the name and call it something like my first funk or something, but just make your name unique. All right, I won't put it here, but you'll decide what you want it to be, okay? These are just examples. Never copy these examples and give to your instructor. You will be severely warned for plagiarism, or punished for plagiarism, I should say. All right, back to the question in hand now. So we're to identify, this is a function call, by the way, so we can say function call. All right, so that's function call here, right? This is another one here, but I gave you 2 different examples, so you just only use one. So if we're using that, then that's the function call, okay? And if we're using one of these functions, we only have one that we use, okay? So let's say we're not using the top one, then this would be our only example, okay? I hope this is making sense to you. Example of my function. You can say whatever you want to say. I'm just saying this, okay? You might say something different. Okay, so the next part is to identify what code is the argument. So the argument is 50, right? Because that's what we're passing there, right? And what code is the parameter? So in this case, the parameter is, can you guess it? Where in the function would we have our parameter? Remember, the definition says that inside the function, the arguments are assigned to variables called parameters. So if it's inside the function and it's assigned to a variable, where do we see a variable in this function here? That's right, it's only one place here. It's number. Well, it's used in 2 different ways, but the parameter would be number, okay? So the parameter in this case is number. All right, what this means is that we can have parameters that will be different depending on the function that you use, okay? Let me give you one more example. I'll leave that on the screen here, but let me give you a totally new example of another version of a function we can create, okay? So by now, you know, we start with def, and let's say let's call this give me a joke. All right, and it's going to take a, let's say, funny word. All right, and we're going to print I ate a, and then we're gonna have funny word, whatever the funny word is applied to us, okay? So remember, when you want to print a variable after a text, you have to use the comma after it, okay? So let's try to call this function now, right? So let me just use some asterisks here just to separate this as a separate section, okay? So we're gonna call it, and the name is give me a joke. And oh, I keep forgetting the colon. Remember, if you leave the colon off, you'll get an error. The funny word that we're going to pass to it is going to be let's say Sasquatch. Okay. Let me put a space after this A so that it doesn't stick to the verb. Okay, let's run this function and see what it does. Run. I ate a Sasquatch. Okay, so in this example here, so this is the function that we've created. This is the function call. So function called here, and then the argument is Sasquatch. Okay, and the parameter is, can you find the parameter in the function? Of course, it's funny word. Okay, and that would actually answer that first part. So this is a big step, and the second part is going to build on that, right? But for now, just get this practice with doing the first part, creating functions and getting them to work. And in the second part to this video, we'll look at how we can use different arguments in our function.